Okay, it is Tuesday, February 18th. Most of this show may be about All-Star games, and I am hyped to talk about it. Also, we'll get into MLB spring training officially beginning. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, so I've been sick for the past 5 days. There wasn't a show on Thursday. I thought I was feeling better the next few days after that. I recorded Friday. Then I got hit hard again yesterday. And I was considering taking another day. Maybe you could hear it in my voice. I was considering taking another day today to rest. I try to wake up early to record these shows. And I thought maybe I'd let myself sleep in another day. Get the proper sleep needed to recover from sickness. The issue is I am way too amped up to talk into a microphone this morning. After what I watched over this past weekend, I just need to memorialize my thoughts this morning. I said last week on several shows leading up to the NHL break, their mid-season break, which is not an all-star break anymore. But I said that I was really excited about this Four Nations tournament and what it could be. We were desperate for an alternative to the NHL All-Star Game. We were desperate for something to look forward to midway through the hockey season. And when they first announced Four Nation at last year's All-Star Game, hand up, I was definitely very skeptical. Would players buy in? Would it be fun if there were only 4 teams? But as time went on, it became more and more obvious that this thing could be a success. The thing that remained to be seen was just how much of a success it could be. How seriously were players going to take it? How fun would it be for audiences to watch? A condensed version of typical international tournaments. And this wasn't even a typical format. No playoff. Just a round robin. The 2 best records make the championship. And it was obvious. Look, it was obvious that what they were gunning for was for a USA against Canada championship game. But for me, at least, there were so many components which needed to go right in this thing. They needed a lot of things to go their way. The NHL needed a lot of things to go their way for this thing to be a success. But then the puck dropped last Wednesday. It was Canada against Sweden. And the second that puck hit the ice, I knew this thing was going to be a rousing success. We don't need to relitigate how amazing that game was. Then the United States killed Finland the next night. And the stage was set for Saturday night. The big showdown. A preview of what most people thought the championship game would end up being. United States versus Canada. In the Bell Center, in Montreal. People were already buying into this tournament at that point. Players were buying into that tournament at that point. They understood that they were giving this tournament 110%. And now, in prime time, we were going to get the matchup we had all been waiting for. The best hockey talent in the world facing off against each other. Everybody's expecting to see McDavid score a wild goal. Jack Eichel to do something crazy. But no. The puck drops and so do the gloves. Nobody saw that coming. United States' Matthew Tkachuk took matters into his own hands. He fought Canada's Brandon Hagel on the opening faceoff. I mean, are you kidding me? They both get sent off the ice. And if that wasn't good enough, then Matthew's brother Brady joins in the action. Not only does he join in the action, he picks a fight with Sam Bennett. And for those who don't know, Sam Bennett is Matthew Tkachuk's teammate with the Florida Panthers. So Brady fights his brother's teammate 5 seconds into the game. And at that point, I and most of America that's watching this, we're losing our minds. I think, I was trying to really put into words what I was feeling at that moment. Can you demonstrate caring for something more than literally starting out the game in the first five seconds with 2 fights? Can you show you care for an event more than that? That you care for your country. I tweeted out the picture of Matthew Tkachuk with President Trump at the White House with the caption, "Don't come back without a 51st state." 2 fights was not enough. JT Miller, New York Rangers top center, got into the mix as well. 5 seconds later, he drops the gloves with Colton Parayko. So 3 fights in 10 seconds. Tell me these guys don't care. Tell me the NHL did not find an event in which their star players care to participate in. Are you kidding me? This thing, 10 seconds in, was spectacular. Ten seconds into this game, it was already an all-time game. A game which you'll remember where you were when you saw it. But it, more importantly, personified exactly what was amazing about this tournament. The NHL was able to make their players care. This means something to them. It means much more than any All-Star game could. And yeah, Connor McDavid scored a SportsCenter top play goal a few minutes later. Canada got off to the 1-0 start, a gorgeous goal. He streaked up the ice with all of his speed and then planted one backhand over Connor Hellebuck's shoulder. The United States end up winning the game 3-1, what was simply a marvelous game. Back and forth, great action, great physicality, hard fought, 2-1 game, empty net goal for the United States. They end up winning it 3-1. But the game truly showed why this was such a resounding success for the NHL. Players cared, and we got amazing action. We saw some of NHL's greatest stars on display. I cannot remember a bigger, in general win. So a general win for any of the 4 major sports leagues than this. This is the biggest win I think I could remember in recent history for baseball, for basketball, for football, and for hockey. And it's shocking it's coming for hockey. It is, in the grand scheme of things, revolutionary for sports. I truly believe that. And we'll get more into kind of where the other leagues play into this a little later on. But there was one thing I was thinking about. I don't want to criticize the event. But, and I don't think this is even a critique, it is so unfortunate that we do not get Russian players in this tournament. I'm not going to make this political, but I imagine if the next day, imagine for a second, if the next day, on Sunday, we got to see one of those 2 teams, one of Canada or the United States, face off against Alexander Ovechkin, or Evgeny Malkin, or Igor Shesterkin, or Artemi Panarin. It is unfortunate that these players could not be involved on the same team, because ultimately we were not and are not able to see the greatest stars take part in this tournament. And not to take away from Sweden or Finland. They have star power and deserve to be there. I guess if you wanted to add a Russian team, you'd have to get rid of Finland. But they have stars as well. Alexander Barkov is one of the best players in the league. Mikko Rantanen, phenomenal too. Those are just two players just off the top of my head. But man, imagine if one of those teams turned around the next day and took on Ovechkin. Imagine that. Imagine how spectacular that would be. I mean, imagine Ovi Watch would be a Four Nations Ovi Watch. Okay, let's pivot here for a second. We're not going to move on per se. I think we'll probably come back to Four Nations, but let's pivot here for a second. And what I want to pivot to is the NBA All-Star Game. While I was waiting for the Four Nations game to start Saturday night, I was scrolling Twitter. Lo and behold, I learned something. Or I was reminded of something. All I was looking forward to on Saturday night was USA-Canada. I had totally forgotten. Hand up. Second time I'm putting my hand up today. Hand up. I had totally forgotten that the NBA skills competition was that night too. I had totally forgotten that it was NBA All-Star Game. All day, all I was thinking about was this Four Nations game. Frankly, I am glad I wasted zero energy on this NBA skills competition. The night got off to a roaring start. Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama, they got disqualified from the skills competition. Why? Well, the competition consisted of a course of different games, different skills the duos had to complete. And one of them was shooting. And so the two of them decided that they were better off not taking the shots because you didn't even have to score the shots. So they were getting torched. These two were getting torched online for trying to scheme the system. And ultimately, they got disqualified from the entire thing. So we started off the night with two players trying to scheme the system in the NBA skills competition. And then Mac McClung won the slam dunk competition. Don't get me wrong. He's insanely talented when it comes to dunking. But seriously, the highlight of NBA All-Star Weekend was a lifetime G Leaguer winning the slam dunk competition for the third straight year. 3 straight years, the winner of the NBA slam dunk competition is a G League player. Does that sound alarming to anybody about the state of basketball and the state of their All-Star Game competition? And frankly, nobody was talking about this event. Like, seriously, nobody cared. To my joy, all everyone was talking about online was USA, Canada, and Four Nations. But luckily for the NBA, the NHL gave them Sunday night all to themselves for the All-Star Game. For the actual All-Star Game. Fine. For the All-Star Game, they also did a 4-team tournament. It was a mini tournament. Games to 40. The teams were coached by the 3 color analysts on Inside the NBA. Chuck, Shaq, and Kenny. And Candace Parker was the 4th coach. Like the night before, I had no idea any of this was happening. Honestly, I was much busier watching SNL 50 than I was watching the NBA All-Star Game. Side note, I thought SNL 50 was fantastic. I proclaim to not discussing anything but sports on this show, but I'll take 30 seconds, or the 10 seconds that just was, to say that I thought it was great. But anyways, another colossal failure for the NBA. Maybe the worst All-Star game they've ever had. I don't have much to say about it. Not entertaining, not good play. Did not feel like we even scratched the surface of seeing great talent in the NBA. And one thing that was controversial leading up to it to the actual game, was LeBron James. During a press conference, a pregame press conference, he casually dropped that he's not actually going to be participating in the game. And people were upset. First of all, classic for NBA players to not actually want to play in the game. And second of all, they were saying if he was never going to play, why didn't he announce it earlier to give somebody else a spot? I don't care to see anybody else. So I don't agree. If you're just saying let's see some sixth man on some random sixth man get an opportunity, I don't care about that. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, well, nobody actually plays in the All-Star game, nobody actually cares, but then also say LeBron should have let somebody else play. So that argument's out the door. It's out the window. The issues with the NBA All-Star game span much further past LeBron James deciding 5 minutes before the game not to play. What the NHL has that the NBA does not is that the players cared. This year, with the event that the NHL put on for their All-Star weekend, which is not really anymore an All-Star game, the players cared. Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, JT Miller cared. They put their bodies on the line to the max. You know, Kevin Durant tweeted yesterday. This was the day after the All-Star game. He tweeted, I think it's more fun to complain about the NBA than to actually watch it. Crazy. Cancel All-Star weekend. Let's just give everybody a break since we're so miserable around this time. You know what, KD? I agree. It may be time for the NBA to just scrap the All-Star game. Will they? No. You're overlooking the amount of money that still probably brings in for the NBA, the amount of revenue, the TV deals that they have with these networks to broadcast the game. But what do you do from here? This was an embarrassing weekend for the NBA. They had the NHL slaughtering them online. It felt like everybody and their mother was talking about Four Nations, and nobody gave two damns about NBA All-Star Weekend. And so what do you do from here? And frankly, what can other leagues do now? One of the crazy things that I saw was across sports, across the entire sports world, everybody was celebrating what a great event the NHL put on. And people were talking about real big personalities were discussing what can the other leagues do to replicate what the NHL was able to do. You know, I saw one specific idea. I think Joel Sherman threw it out. And it was saying, how can baseball replicate this? How can they make their All-Star game better by trying to incorporate an international flavor representing your country? And one idea that he threw out was make the home run derby, instead of just having it random or just having it AL versus NL, have it be 4 players from each, not 4 players, but a couple players from each country representing in one country, and they win it for their country. I love that. I absolutely love that. That's a great idea. Good thinking. I don't think baseball's All-Star game needs much fixing, because I think players already care and put in enough effort for it to work. So I don't think that they necessarily need to make some sort of Four Nations tournament, although I do think in the condensed NHL Four Nations format that they propose and they are doing, I think it would actually work in baseball. If they wanted to do a USA, make a Japan, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, whichever four countries you want to choose. If they wanted to go that route, I think it would be awesome. The beauty of Four Nations is that it is short and to the point. Round robin, 4 teams, no playoff, just two top 2 records, go all the way to the championship, and that's it. And so, yes, if you used it for a home run derby format, it would be amazing. But I think it would work just as well if you wanted to scrap the entire All-Star game and do your own Four Nations. Now, the problem for the other 2 leagues is it would never work in the NFL. You'd have America versus America. And I think in the NBA, you kind of run into that problem too. I'm not sure you could really put together 4 countries worth of teams in the NBA. In the Olympics, they take these teams, Serbia. You have Jokic on Serbia, but then you also have pretty much the rest of the team are all Serbian players that do not play in the NBA. And the idea I proposed last week for the NBA was have it be regional, United States regional, right? So either do states, so all the players from New York play all the players from originally from California. I think that could be fun. You could do all the players from the Northeast against the Midwest, and then a world team, and then a West team. I was thinking this last night. Why don't you do all the players from each prep school? So you do a team of IMG against Lehigh, and you do it that way. I thought that could be fun too. But the NBA, just to wrap this all up, the NBA needs to think of some way to make their players care. Will a Four Nations work? I don't think so. You have so much international talent, though, and so much talent within the United States. You could do a World versus United States game. Figure out a way to make your players care. The NHL figured out how to do it, and it is so fun. I cannot wait for Thursday night, the rematch of United States against Canada. Okay, let's move on. Let's do this quick. Baseball spring training began, so we are getting closer to warm weather. It is 23 degrees right now. I was thinking this morning, I cannot wait for it to be warm outside. But we're getting there. Spring is in the air. We haven't had such major news out of baseball. There were 2 things I just wanted to discuss. One is that the Angels announced that Mike Trout will be playing right field. From now on, he'll be moving from center field. Look, we can finally watch this guy play. Baseball is better when Mike Trout is in the Angels lineup. I think he brings up his own value because he's going to be more durable. But I think one thing that we're starting to see a little bit more is star players do not maximize their value in center field. I want to talk about Aaron Judge for 1 second. And he obviously made that crazy drop in the World Series. I don't think that there is any world where it makes sense to put your star players in center field. Either they're going to wear themselves out trying to field that position properly, or frankly, there's very few players that are so good in center field as a fielder that it's worth it to put them there for the wear and tear. Aaron Judge last year, and he's different than Trout. Trout's a phenomenal fielder, but for him it wasn't worth it. For Trout, it's not worth it for the wear and tear. For Judge, it's not worth it for the wear and tear. And also, he's just not a good enough fielder to play center field, so it didn't make any sense. And I think what you're going to start seeing is less of an emphasis on offense from your center fielder and more of an emphasis on being an elite defensive center fielder up the middle. And so we're seeing it now with the Angels. The Yankees are moving Judge back to right field. I think we are in an era where teams are going to begin moving their star fielders, even if they're great defensively. I think we are going to start seeing them moved out of center field. There was one other piece of baseball information yesterday. That was Frankie Montas. This was the first big injury of the spring, it feels like. I'm pretty sure. And Frankie Montas is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. He has a high-grade latch strain. And so I'm already seeing Mets fans complaining, I can't believe they didn't sign anybody else, blah, 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 blah. Frankie Montas is a low-risk move. That's why you had 7 pitchers on your roster. Because if he can't pitch, there are other pitchers on their roster that are, frankly, the advanced numbers show that they will produce similar to Frankie Montas. Their ceilings might not be as high as Frankie Montas, but guys like Griffin Canning, guys like Paul Blackburn, Tyler McGill can put up the same safe numbers that you were going to get from Frankie Montas. I still think that the Mets should go get Dylan Cease. Don't get me wrong. But they essentially planned for this, and they have the players on their roster to make up for losing Frankie Montas for the first couple months of the season. Hopefully it's only that. I'm not going to get it. I saw people saying they should trade for Marcus Stroman. I'm not going to get into that. They should not. No. Stick with what you have unless you can get a guy like Dylan Cease. Okay. That's a show. Sorry if I sounded horrible. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever happens in the sports world. Make sure you're following on X. Subscribed on YouTube. Like, comment. Following on Spotify. Have a fantastic day. We will see you tomorrow.